Hey, what's up? It's another episode of that Dirty South podcast with SE Wrestle, Ford Wrestling. As you can see, glad to be back, man. What an amazing week. We got lots to talk about. We'll talk about the upcoming 14U and 16U duels. We'll talk about the Knockout SummerSlam that just happened, the Miami Hawks camp that just happened, and well trained at a camp, and BB trained at a camp, and everything was going on in Florida. But the two big events were those, and the two big upcoming events are those. So
Well,
anyway.
and there were other events in other places. Like, I mean, I saw a team camp up at Lander. I saw bootleggers duels up in Tennessee. Lots of different things going on, lots of different places as well across the Southeast. So
Yeah,
it's a busy time of year.
and it's crazy talking to parents. I was sitting talking with a parent at Summer Knockout, and I think multiple people think the same way. It's like, man, it was like everybody picked the first week of June or to do or the first to do something like this, and it was crazy because you had the huge Summer Knockout going on. At least in Florida, you had the huge Summer Knockout going on with 32 teams. Then you had Pat Lugo's inaugural camp down there, which was huge. And then he had his thing. And then you had Well Trained doing a huge camp up in the north. You've got BB Train doing a camp, and you've got other people that have camps coming up. Oh, you had the 14U prep camp down at
Mm-hmm.
YIC. I think the 16U team may have been at Mako. I heard something that they were going to do some sort of training at Mako. I don't know if that happened or not, but it just seemed like everything has happened in that week. And but I know talking to different coaches and different people that put on events, they're like, we try we try to avoid stuff, but we can't avoid everything, right? So
No, right. I mean, the calendar has become so packed with different opportunities. And this is what we've talked about now, I think a couple of different times. And that is, it's good and bad. It's good from the perspective that you shouldn't really have to travel very far anywhere in the Southeast to get opportunities to compete and get some training and everything else. It's bad because, you know, when the knockout is doing their thing with some really good teams, and Camden came down. I saw pictures of you with some of the Camden
yeah,
boys and everything else. Um, with Lugo now putting the Hawks thing, the camp, and then the tournament this weekend as well, that means Gladiator wasn't there, so you didn't get those kids competing against one another. And I'm not saying you have to have those kids compete against each other all the time, but iron does sharpen iron, and it is one of those things where um everybody kind of takes a step back when we try to have so many different opportunities, when so many different opportunities exist. It just is. It's just the way it is.
yeah, and it must have maybe that was the best time to get open gyms, or maybe the best time to get what is it, commercial money for a spot or whatever. It seems like everything happened then. But man, I mean, as usual, obviously, Osceola always does an outstanding job with any event they ever run, and once again, it was on point. Um, except Sunday, Saturday morning, uh, the Macy difficulty. So we were hot as hell. But the good thing is
Oh, really?
they sold out of all the Gatorade and water because everybody was drinking it. But yeah, it was a little warm. They finally got it fixed, and everything was back to normal. But yeah, uh, it was funny. But some of the coaches liked it because they were like, "Oh, it's just like our room. We get an advantage, right?" But it was pretty funny. But man, like usual, they run an unbelievable event. Always, the duels are awesome, fun. Um, I think you might have seen that I posted the four placers with Camden. I believe they called themselves the Outsiders,
Yeah.
um, winning it in a great close duel with excuse me, with Alpha Dogs, the reigning champ. Alpha Dogs. Unfortunately, they had a three-time state champ go down with a concussion early in the event. We hope that Devin Nolan's doing okay. We hope he's doing well and getting healthy. But it came down to the last match, and it was matter of fact. Let's see. I got team results. I got it up here. Club Outcast, and we'll go to the championship match. So it came down to the last match, which I believe was Pedersen versus man, what's his name? Is it Williams? I'm having a brain moment here. Sorry, everybody. Let me pull it up here.
Well, wait.
I think it was it 113?
So
Championship round one, first place match. So it was Bradley Patterson, versus Caleb Williams. It was Williams. And it came down to that as the final match. It was 34-33 or 34-32 going into that final match. So Patterson, as Caleb Williams is an unbelievable wrestler, and he's a stud in our state, and he wrestles super hard. But Patterson is just a different level kid. He came out and being NHSCA champ a couple of times, Georgia State champ. He came out and put the nail in the coffin for them. But you had some great matches in there. I think I told you about the Weaver Gernhardt, where Gernhardt turned two at the buzzer.
Yeah.
So that was a good match. It could have gone either way there. That was the finals there. But throughout the tournament, the first day, you get a lot of like the 60-0 or 63-3 or 58-10, right? And then when they kind of get through those pools, then you start to see some really good duels starting to happen, And then matchups, right? You'll see like a Sabia and you'll see like we saw Sabia and Little, or we saw a Dwayne and I think it was Dylan Smith, or we saw some great matches like that, Ethan Riley and Milan. So you started to see some good matchups start to happen.
The thing that stands out to me is that so I don't looking over some of the Florida teams, right? So the Alpha Dogs, you got Tristan Horn, Dominic Rodriguez, Caleb Williams, Tim Boda, Birdsey Adams, Motor. You got TJ Gernhardt, Ty Rodriguez, who are both Brandon kids, Raymond Shaw, Aiden Wolf, but they're kind of I wouldn't say a hodgepodge, but they're kind of a mix of different schools that come together, to kind of be competitive. Every single kid who wrestled for Camden wrestles for Camden, dude. Every single one of them.
They had a so-called B team there that was not so B. I mean, they were, as a matter of fact, when they wrestled the Alpha Dogs for the first half of the Alpha Dog duel with the other team, they were down a couple points, and then of course they got into the big weights of Alpha Dog, and then that's when the tide turned, right? But what is good? I mean, I was impressed. George Jenkins had a really good show, and I know they came in last in the finals duel, but to get to the championship duel, to get a bunch of wins, they had several kids that looked really good. They got a young kid there, Drew is his name, and man, he can really wrestle. I'll give you his full name here. Let me look it up. But obviously Roderick Brown, who's been a really good wrestler for so long, and he's in his he graduated this year. But they have a young kid. I think he's at 113 or 120, and his name is Drew. I know that, but I don't know. I don't know the rest of it, and I'm looking here. Damn, how many times did they wrestle him? Oh, Andrew Taylor. I'm looking for Drew because they call him Drew. So I'm looking for Drew. I'm going through everything, and I'm seeing Andrew. What a retard I am. Yeah, Andrew Taylor. He's a little stud, man. He can wrestle, and I watched him wrestle a couple times at Fawa State or Fawa, the qualifier, and he was fun to watch. And then I think I called you about that little girl, little Higgins, and she can throw down. I mean, she's
tough, dude.
She obviously was in a weight class that had multiple state state champs and state places and state runner. I mean, but she was fighting it. I mean, she didn't make it easy for anybody, and she was fun to watch. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, again,
Well,
they
and
always do a great job.
I think that, of course you had Camden, you talked about Alpha Dogs, but you still had, I mean, Funky Monkey, Evil Empire, you had who else was a part of that? The Braves, the Lake Gibson crew, Buchholz, I
Oh man,
saw had a team in there. NFWA had a team. So,
yeah. And
again,
Funky Monkey was on the Camden side, so I was thinking Funky Monkey, man. Watching them wrestle their first few duels, I was like, wow, they're really good. Um, but then they had Camden in the semifinals, and Camden's just okay. So
yeah. Speaking of which, I don't know if everybody noticed, but I've been announcing the teams coming to this year's knockout, and the Camden Wildcats are back in the mix. And I'll tell you what, Camden with Tuttle out of Oklahoma, with South Dade and all the Florida schools. Man, I mean, you got McCallie coming down from Tennessee. It's gonna be a great event. It's gonna be a
and
great event.
the winter knockout now with the addition of, as we know, our buddy pulled the cat out of the bag with the college edition, and
Right?
and that'll be fun. So yeah, so I know that was it. So it was a long week for me. I went 3 days to that, right? So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I was there. A lot of fun as always, right? And shout out
And then
to
you get
Jim
up
and
early in the
Trivet.
morning and drove to South Florida.
Oh man, yeah! Shout out to Jim and Trivet, man, and their team over there. They did a hell of a job. And then I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and I shot down to the Miccosukee hotel down there where Pat Lugo and all his friends from the Iowa Hawkeyes had a clinic for 3 days. Um, and I saw some postings of it, and it looked like it was a great time. And then I got down there and I got to talk to some kids and some people, and they said, "Man, what an awesome clinic!" And to learn from those Iowa guys and girls that they had there teaching, and then you obviously have Coach Duck there too, which is a bonus for all the young kids out there that are learning from a guy like that, um, and several people, right? But they told me that the clinic was great, the mindset that was taught there, the way they spoke to the kids, the type of drilling they did was awesome. They said one day, one of the camp counselors took the kids out to the parking lot and they did hand fighting in the parking lot. So that
We've done that before. I
yeah,
understand that.
yeah. So they said that was a cool experience. And then the tournament, they had 6 mats, kind of shaped like a U, and then they had the parents kind of boarded off in the middle so they could see all the mats. Um, and they went off and they started with the younger kids in the morning, and then as the younger kids were finishing, they funneled in the high school kids, and the high school kids got to wrestle, and they all got some great matches in. um, you know there weren't matchups like we saw at the summer knockout, um, but they were great matches because most of the kids were a lot of the kids were on the same level, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you had some really good kids that are state qualifiers and state placers, but they were like one-offs in the bracket, right? So like you
Mhm.
had Willie White, or you had Solis, or you had I'm trying to remember his name from Harmony. So you had kids like that. You had Willow White. You had they
Mhm.
call her hit girl Chloe Perez. You had a lot of uh, studs, but it wasn't matchups. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
just a lot of really really good wrestling, and Pat and his brother David and Coach Duck and Coach Blasucci, who was there, and uh, Columbus coach and all those they were all there
Grant.
in the room, and
Yeah.
Grant and so many others were in there helping them, and it was really fun. It was really cool to see. It was run well. It was run properly, in my opinion.
That's
And
cool.
and it was fun to take pictures and be there. He had some gear. He had, I think next year, I think you might have seen this morning where I was posting some graphics, champion graphics. I had created a champion graphic with him prior to it, and then the goal was to be able to get the picture of them with the medal on the mat. That was his first idea, was he would hand them a shirt and stuff like that. But as everything gets going, you realize that's not going to work, right? It's just the craziness. So they had a podium set up outside in the hallway. They would go up and get their medal. And of course, I'm just only one human, so I couldn't be in both places at the same time. When I figure out how to do that, I'll be better. but, but until then, so
You'll be much more efficient than what you currently are.
Right. So I told him next year what I need to do is just we need to figure out how to, obviously we'll pay another photographer. I'll have him come in with me and I'll set up everything right there with lights, and we can just make sure that if someone's there the whole time and get pictures. So the photos that I'm getting now is I just asked parents to send me photos of their kid with their medal on so that we can do it. But it was cool. I mean, I got to meet Forrest Molinari. I took pictures of her at the Olympic trials. And I got to meet her for the first time. Obviously, you're at the Olympic trials, but really to meet them while you're there is tough. You may be able to get an interview once in a while,
no, right.
but you can't talk to them. They're so locked in and they're so focused and they're on a mission, and they have, they come off the mat, then they have a commitment to make to this interview spot right there with USA Wrestling. Then they got a commitment to make there. And then they look at you and go, I just want to go back to so you don't get chances to actually talk to them. But I really got to meet her. What a super nice girl. She's getting ready. She's going to fight next. So that was pretty cool. I saw her training down at Mako on some posts, but I told her, hey, I've got some pictures of you. And she's like, really? I'm like, yes, I got some photos of you at the Olympic trial. She was like, no kidding. I've been looking for some and I can't find any anywhere. So I said, well, I'll send you a message with all the pictures I took of you and you can have them. And she said, okay, thanks. That would be great. So as a matter of fact, I sorted them out this morning and I sent her a link on her Instagram. So hopefully when she's done training, she'll see them. But cool talking to her. I ran into Mark Hall. So I don't know if anybody knows this story, but a funny story about Mark Hall. This goes to show you how intelligent I am. I was in Detroit. We were in Detroit for the NCAAs, and I've got my kids with me, and I've got Coach Tony with me. At the time, he was at Tenorock. He's now at George Jenkins. And we were walking over to some event that they're gonna have prior to the NCAA. So I think it was like the Border Wars or something they do prior to the NCAAs.
Yeah.
And we stopped for breakfast inside this little breakfast spot across the street. And I see Ben Golden sitting there, and I know Ben Golden. My son knows Ben Golden because Daniel trained at CFWA at the time, which is now Spartan. And so we go over, we say hey to Ben Golden. We're talking to Ben Golden. And I look over at this gentleman sitting across from Ben Golden, and I say, oh, hey, nice to meet you. Are you wrestling in the NCAAs tomorrow?
Oh.
And my son goes, Dan, you dumbass, that's Mark Hall. And I'm like, interesting. Who's Mark Hall? And then he proceeds to tell me the legendary status of Mark Hall. And I'm like, oh. So I felt like a complete asshole. And I went to the waitress. I told the waitress come over and I said, can anything they want for breakfast, it's on me. Give me the bill. I said, Mr. Hall, I really apologize. I'm sorry. And he goes, oh, no big deal. That's no problem. I'm like, that's all right. Breakfast is on me. And it was cool. We sat there and talked a little bit and I laughed and it was funny. So I saw him this weekend and I walk up and like, hey, do you remember me? He's like, remind me. Because I'm sure you meet so many people, right? And I started telling him the story. He goes, oh yeah, I do remember that. And I said, I was going to come talk to you at the Olympic trials, but you were pretty locked in and I didn't think you wanted to be bothered after everything you were going through there. So he goes, well, I appreciate that. So he did say he eventually went back and got his shoes and was able to get those. But I asked him, why didn't you do it the traditional way? He's like, yeah, I'm not into all that attention, so he kind of just took him off and walked off. But
he just took a job, I think, in Oklahoma.
Yeah, what a super nice guy. Yeah, he was wearing the Oklahoma shirt on, and but it's funny because I walked up to him, I go, "Are you Mark Hall?" Of course, I knew it was Mark Hall this time. But that's the story of me. Yeah, I mean, I did that with Barry Davis once too. So
Well, to be fair, right? You are and to be fair, like a lot of wrestlers kind of look alike. I mean, it could be a lot of different people. You might not know, you
Well, these
know.
two, well, he looks young, so I thought that was there. But what happened with Barry Davis is when I started the show during COVID, I didn't know anybody. So, except a small little 10 people I met. So, what I would do is I would start to look up people on Facebook. I don't know if I ever told you the story. So, I type in wrestling or wrestlers and they come up. And I see this thing, Barry Davis comes up. So, I send a private message because it says he's part of wrestling. So, I send a private message. And I'm doing a show with Lee Kemp, which thank God I knew who he was because I got Sports Illustrated when I was younger, so he was in it.
Yeah.
I did know that. But I get done with Lee Kemp, and my phone rings, but it's the Facebook phone. You know the how they call you through Facebook. I pick up the phone and I'm like, "Hello, this is Dan Ward. Hey, who's this?" I'm like, "This is Dan Ward. This is Barry Davis." I'm like, "Who? Barry Davis." Like, you sent me a message about some show. I'm like, "Are you a wrestler? Are you a coach? What do you do?" He says to me, "What? What do you know what? You should do your research before you call people." And he hangs up on me. And I'm like, "Oh shit." So I'm like, whatever. I just had Lee Camp, not knowing that this is Barry Davis, right? And so I Google Barry Davis and I see that he's like one of the seven wonders of the wrestling world. And I'm like, oh boy, that was messed up, right? So at the time I had met a guy named Bud Hennenball, who we know now. And
Yeah.
um who I know now very well, but I call him up. I'm like, "Sir, I think I made a boo boo." He's like, "What do you mean?" Some guy named Barry Davis called me, and I didn't know who it was, and I was like, "Who are you calling? Why are you calling me?" Right? Hung up the phone on me. So anyway, a few days later, Barry Davis called me back, and it was great. We had a show, and it was a really fun show. And at the end, he told me again, he goes, "You do your fucking research before you get." So I'm like, "All right." So, but every time we run into each other over the years, now we laugh about it. It's funny, and I did some interviews with him last year at the event when the coaches came down to Fort Lauderdale, and it was good. But yeah, it's the history of me. I run into people that I have no idea, and they're legends. But that's that's crazy. But anyway, duels are coming up this week: Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Indiana, all over the country, Ohio. We got duels coming up, Utah, everywhere. So I guess the first one's coming up for what, 14U and 16U. I saw the 14U prep camps were going on this weekend all over the region. So
Yeah.
this is in your wheelhouse, man. Take it away.
So 14U duels in Pennsylvania, right? Last year, so for everybody who doesn't really know, freestyle and Greco, you wrestle both Greco and freestyle. So you have an independent, like you have a tournament in Greco and a tournament in freestyle. And typically the Southeast teams send a team. Each state sends a team, but that's not happening this year. This year, Florida sent a team, Georgia sent a team, North Carolina sent a team, and Tennessee sent a team. So no Alabama, no South Carolina at 14U duels in PA. They start Greco tomorrow. And I'll tell you what, like it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of state pride involved. For me, it's a opportunity to kind of get a sense of the best kids. 14U's, they're not going to be at Fargo. So, but they will be at Fargo probably next year or whatever. And it's an idea to kind of get an idea of who some of these kids are. So, like an example, last year, Giovanni Tovar, undefeated at 14U duels. Peter Mako had a really good tournament. Giovanni Solis had a really good tournament. Tim Boda had a really good tournament. You had several individuals. They end up obviously being high school kids, or wrestling in high school this past year. Several of them won state titles and everything else. So if you're looking for kids who are like that next level that are going to kind of be on a breakout sort of thing, These are the kids that you're going to want to keep an eye on. And I'll tell you what, Georgia and Florida battled it out last year in the 14U duels. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's come down to Georgia and Florida a lot lately in some of these younger duels and competitions. I feel like when these Southeast kids that are in that lower bracket become cadets and get out to Fargo, we're going to see a lot of hardware coming back to the Southeast from there. I think we had a wave of that at Fargo these last couple of years, and then those kids are all graduated, and I think we'll take a. I think we're going to do okay this year, but I think next year that whole wave coming in from Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, it's going to be awesome to watch. But yeah, those kids you mentioned, they're okay.
Yeah, well, and actually the kids I mentioned, so Solis isn't on the team this year, but I know Tovar and Mako, but now they moved to 16U. So I can tell you right now, and you as a parent, but I mean, back when I was coaching, I can tell you being a second year 14U or a second year 16U or a second year junior, huge. Not yet you can't have success as a first year, but it's a different kind of thing. And I think Florida has 6 kids who wrestled last year at 14U duels that are back on this year's 14U duels team. So
yeah, I wonder why Giovanni's not on it. I don't know.
I have no clue. But yeah, a couple names I'd pay attention to. Grayson McDonald down low. You got Elijah Castanon, who is at 102. He's a stud. Several others that are studs throughout Team Florida, and then Team Georgia. Man, they got a bunch of really solid kids as well. Walker Woodard and that sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see because. So, again, for context for everybody, right?
Yeah, look at that team. I agree with you. Adrian Day, Mateo Gonzalez,
Russ Haas,
a lot of kids. Logan Price, Elijah Castagnon. Yeah, there's a lot of good kids on there. I mean, they all.
Is that how you say it, Castagnon? Yeah, that's probably right. I mean, I just slaughter it, so that's just the way that works.
We can say Castanon and see if he calls us.
I think that's what I actually said the first time. So Castanon. Elijah, if I said that, you feel free to drop me a line and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about.
Great coaching staff too, with Price and Kelly and Baldwin and Taylor.
Yep.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's interesting for me is that records don't necessarily reflect the quality that you get, right? Because Georgia last year made the gold silver pool. That means they were top 8, beating Florida on criteria to make the pool. Okay. Well, so Georgia, I think, finishes like 3 and 4 or in freestyle. No, they finished 3 and 6. Okay. Florida, because they lost, went to the bronze copper pool, which they took second, 10th overall. They finished 7 and 3. So you can see the difference between gold, silver pool and getting your butt kicked on last day of matches versus being one of the top teams of the bronze copper pool and being at the very top. So remember that when you look at kids' records, because just because a kid comes back and went 3 and 5 doesn't mean that they had a bad weekend. They could have wrestled some of the absolute best kids around.
At Spartan Duels, there was a couple teams that they had to wrestle Kong, and they had to wrestle California, and they had to wrestle the Spartan A team, and then there's a whole other set of teams that didn't have to wrestle those guys, and their records looked great, right? And the kids over here that had to wrestle those three animals were like 3 and 3, 2 and 3, right? So we see it a lot of time. I think we talked about that a little bit last week about records, because you see these kids always come in. But the 16U duels should be tremendous as well. I know you were talking about that. And then
Yeah.
junior duels coming up, right? So we've got
Yeah, so we'll do my plan is so I did a preview for 14U and 16U that is posted, right?
saw that.
Next week is junior and girls, and it's all the girls. The 14U girls, the 16U girls, and the junior girls are all next week, along with the junior duels. And I'll get that one posted probably this weekend, and I'm hoping we'll talk about it next week on the show.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the 16U duels are in Utah. And again, man, I'm telling you, these are two really, I mean, Florida and Georgia are the two really good teams. South Carolina's got some good kids on it. I'm interested to see how they perform. North Carolina's got a couple of good kids on it. I don't know that either one of them is a team because you can't go into a duel with holes. You go into a duel at this level with holes, and Pennsylvania's got, a Bassett here and a Herring there and this person there and so on and so forth. Yeah, you're not going to make up ground. Like, you can't give up points against good teams. There's just no way to make that work.
By the way, who's Bassett and Herring?
Yeah, you're funny.
Are they any good? Yeah.
But one of the things that always is fascinating to me is how do the kids who were in 14Us make the transition? So we get to see Tovar, we get to see Mako now in 16U duels. That's gonna be fun to watch. I'll tell you what, Armand Williams is a stud. He is a stud. I don't know about Greco, but certainly in freestyle. 138 pounds, 16Us. I think he is one to watch, definitely, for Team Florida.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had the list of 16U here. I had the 14U
because pull it up on SEWrestle.com.
Because they had posted it on Facebook, so I had pulled it off there. Pull it up on SEWrestle.com, everybody. Go to SEWrestle.com and you could find everything, Southie. Oh, look at those two ugly guys right there on the front page. Wow.
Who are you standing with?
Some ugly dudes. Oh, look at that. 16U, Florida, Georgia. Oh, man, I got to hang out on your page more often. Guys, you want to educate yourself. Go to the page, southeastwrestle.com. He's got spreadsheets on here. Wow, Mac Andrews is good at 165. He's really good. I like him.
Jonathan RJ Phelan down at 100 pounds. He's tough.
RJ Phelan is tough. He is tough. And you know what? People are going to start to talk about him. He's been kind of a kid that's been under the radar a lot, not spoken about a lot, but I think he is going to get some they're going to talk about him. Zach Leto, Margolis, that's great. But even, I mean, looking at Georgia too, look at all these guys.
Georgia's team is stacked. Georgia has put together probably the best 16U team I've seen them put together in a long, long time.
Man, Area Mills and Cody Clark and T Mills and Hunt. There's another Hunt. Jeez. Eli Flowers, Ty Valenzuela. Man, there's some studs.
There are.
Yeah. And then, like you said, North Carolina has probably too many holes to really come out. They'll probably win some spots there because they've got some really good kids locked in there. But yeah, like you said, at that level, the holes affected a lot, right?
Yeah. So it'll be. I mean, look, if I'm paying attention to what's going on, as far as if you don't come in, if you come in with more than, say, a hole, one forfeit, your chances of making top 8 are probably pretty small. I'll give you an example. Okay. Last year, I don't know if 14U or 16U, not 100% sure, but Pennsylvania, Iowa, Illinois, your 3 top teams, basically, either in 14U or 16U. Okay. You have in 16U and 14U, you have about 18 weight classes. Okay. With all the smaller weights included. Okay. Iowa brought 27 kids.
Wow.
Illinois brought 26 kids for one team. You're telling me that that kid who's sitting at the number 2 spot at 132 for Team Illinois isn't a stud? He is 100% a stud. But what they've done is they pushed their chips in and they said, we're going to make a run to try to win this entire thing. And
Yeah.
that
So if
you have to do that.
and styles make fights, so they've got two different styles in the kids, and then they also have, if God forbid, knock on wood, somebody sprains an ankle, hurts a finger, gets hurt.
Correct. Correct.
Maybe gets winded, maybe just needs a break. They've got another stud walking in right behind them, and I mean that means a lot. You know, and I know Fargo's down the road here, but that's something that I say about our Florida girls is we have so many good Florida girls. If we could get to the point where we could bring the same number of girls that California brings, I think we could beat California.
That's a bold statement, dude. That's a bold statement.
Yep. If we have the same amount of girls, if we're able to bring the same amount of girls in our state that they bring, I think we could win the whole thing. But you can't win the whole thing when you're bringing half the, it's very difficult to get unless, I mean, even last year, look at last year, 5 girls win stop signs, right? But we still couldn't win the whole thing because the wrestlebacks mean a lot. And having so many girls in those wrestlebacks getting points for you means a whole lot. And we leave a lot of girls home. Not because we choose to. It's just the growth of our state and the growth of girls wrestling, and little by little we're getting there. But yeah.
Well, and as an education for everyone who may not understand, big states have an advantage. Like they just do in that situation, because you bring your high school team, right? I get one kid at every single weight and I can count them as my point scorer. That's not how they do Fargo, right? That's not how that works. And I can score points. Now, only the ones that make the top 8 score points. Okay. So you could have somebody get all the way to the end and get very close to top 8 and they won't score a point for you. But if I can put 4 girls at 105 pounds at 1st, 5th, 6th, and 8th, I'm getting points for all of them. So right. What you're saying is so true, because that's what California does. California gets their 4 champs, and then they get a bunch of 5ths, a bunch of 6ths.
Right. Because they're playing the numbers game, right? I mean, listen,
they're giving their kids opportunities. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
They are excellent. They're coached well. They're tremendous. I love everything they do. This is not a knock on California. They're the carrot, right? And we should look at Michigan.
They are the standard.
They've done in Michigan. Michigan is trying to get there too, and they get close. But I just feel like if either one of them, maybe Michigan can put a big number of girls together, but it just feels like I see these girls wrestle in the Southeast and in Florida, and we have a lot of good talent. And I hope we can get to a point. But I know it being around Coach Mason and Daisy and the whole team aspect of it. I do understand. You've got to be able to board these people. You got to be able to find rooms for these people. You got to be able to find enough flights for these people. You got to be able to find gear. You got to make it affordable. There's so much that goes into what Team Florida does to be able to get them there. And they work so hard. And then you've got to have enough coaches to be there, and that all costs, right? So
yeah,
not just money, but time. But yeah, and speaking of the transition you were saying from like 14U to 16U, or more like at Fargo, we saw that you go every year, but my first year there, I saw a lot of kids compete at cadet, and they went all the way to where they got stop signs. And then I saw them compete the next year at juniors, and they got 0 stop signs. And
yeah.
And it was just a huge.
It's a jump.
It's a jump, and I think. Just like I think this year, those same kids will go back and possibly will bring stop signs home because maybe they felt the speed, they felt the action, they felt the strength, they felt everything that was different at that next level. I was telling somebody I grew up playing basketball, and I remember going from I know I'm small. but I went from JV to varsity, and I remember going from JV to varsity, and the speed was like boom, it was on top of you, and you're like, and every time you miss a level, and then I realized I wasn't going to be any. I wasn't growing vertically, so it wasn't going to be a career move for me. But there was a moment where I was really good at that sport, and but yeah, when you go from different levels in any sport, the speed changes, right? You hear the college people going to the NFL saying, "Man, I'm trying to get used to the speed of the game," and I think that same thing happens at this level. I mean, I was talking to Forrest Molinari, and I said the one thing that I noticed about the Olympic trials, is it was the most basic wrestling, but at the highest level. But to us looking, it looked like slow motion, right? but but to them wrestling, it's like you can't it's so hard to get a leg at that level. It's so hard to get us, like everything is different, right? And she was saying you can't try anything stupid at that level, or else it'll backfire.
Yeah, yeah. And I think actually it's a challenge for us because as you go further up, I mean, it's like MMA, right? Or it's like even when you go from a JV kid to a state championship kid, right? Your matches get so much closer because once that kid scores, or once that one person scores and they get that thing, to get that back is super hard. And the the room for error is just so small. So small.
I got something. Well, first off, do you have anything else about the duels?
No, the only thing I would say is I guess make sure you guys tune in. Greco, I think, is Wednesday and Thursday. Freestyle is Friday, Saturday. Tune in, watch the kids. I think it'll be on Flow. I watched it all last year. Everything else, should be some great matches. They should release the seeds today, Tuesday, probably tonight, after weigh-ins, and we'll get a pretty good sense of what's going on. And I'll try to post stuff all weekend long, or all week long, so you guys can kind of keep up to date with what's going on. So
yeah, so that's awesome. And man, his website is very in depth. You can go in here and you don't have to do any research on your own. He's done it for you. So get on here and look, man. It's matter of fact, before
yeah,
I
you
go
see
into
those pin ratings in there, don't you?
Yeah, before I go into talking, we're just
you showing my
look, guys. I mean, he's got everything's broken down. Can you see it?
I can, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you can just see everything here. He's got everything broken down. So go there, check it out, get your information, get the knowledge.
I did not give very much love to Team South Carolina. I want to make sure I point out Jesse Howard from Team South Carolina is up at 190. He wrestled in the same bracket as Ronan On and Peter Mako at Southeast Regionals. He is a good kid out of the state of South Carolina. I think he's another first year 16U 190. So it will be interesting to see how he kind of, he hits this weekend, where for me, this weekend.
That's Jesse. You said Jesse Howard?
Yeah. This weekend gives me a lot of sense of what's going to happen if they end up in Fargo, because this tells me if kids can compete or not.
Yeah. That kid Laronga's pretty good too. I've seen him wrestle before.
Yeah. Mobley. And then down low, you got Stefano Calderon, Montero Royal. You got some good kids on Team South Carolina. Team South Carolina is getting better and better. So anyway,
no, it's cool. What I wanted to ask you was, I was at a folk style tournament this week, and it was brand new folk style scoring.
Yeah.
So it was threes, it was 4 and 5 counts. Things were going by a little quicker. People were getting points back faster. Matches were ending. I like it. I think it makes some matches really interesting. Have you experienced that yet? Have you been to a folk style high school tournament in the Southeast yet, where you saw the score?
Yeah. So even before the colleges did it, Elite Eight Duels did it last fall.
Uh, uh,
Because Fretwell's like, yeah, we're totally gonna do this. And I'll tell you what, I this is a much longer conversation that we'll have to
yes.
probably have to get into and talk about in much greater detail at a later point in time. But I will say this: number one, I do think that the matches go by faster. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing in that when a kid is really overmatched, it's the match does happen and does happen quickly. Um, uh, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1 gets kind of demoralizing, and I don't know that we want that. I do fear a little bit that we really need to be careful about making sure we have beginners wrestling beginners. Um, Try to, especially in off-season tournaments, let the kids wrestle and get mat time. And if it's 3 this way and 3 back this way, and this is happening and that happens, who cares, right? I mean, that's all great. It's when you get Jax Forrest coming up against some kid who we don't know anything about, and
and he gets 3-4 counts in a minute, 30
yeah, I mean,
seconds.
and it's over in
And you
42
saw that.
seconds.
You saw not who's the kid? I think I sent you. I sent you a couple pictures of some kids, but one of the Camden kids. He used to have the long hair. Now it's short. He's won 2 state championships.
Ryder Wilder.
Ryder Wilder, and you saw him take a kid down, and it was like boop, 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 and it was over. And
Yep.
all the coach could do is look at the kid and go, "Oh, I'll tell you." Right? I mean, it's yeah. So it was over, but I thought the 3-point takedown thing was definitely made matches interesting because you're looking at like a 8-5 matchup or a 5-3 matchup, and there's or no 5-2 matchup, and there's a minute left. I mean, we're just a
Oh,
takedown away
I,
from seeing
I
this thing
like it
become
as a
interesting.
whole. I like it
Yeah,
as a whole. I just I want to be I just want to be really thoughtful about how we don't throw the beginners to the sharks and
right.
matches are over super quick. You want them to get time to wrestle and everything else. But um I
Totally
actually
agree.
I was thinking to myself, if I wish that I wish we had some kind of like belt system in wrestling where you're like, dude, this is a white belt tournament, right?
Oh,
Don't show up. Don't show up with your black belts.
it's funny that you said that. I gotta find it. Oh, you know who it is? Irons Elite. He started down in his club. He started a system, kind of like a belt system, but he does it with shoelaces. So the kids get different color shoelaces for different levels that they've achieved. So if they come in the room and they only have like a white shoelace, then he knows that, well, I'm not going to put the white shoelace with the green shoelace, right? Or whatever the colors, I don't
Yeah.
remember. So
Yeah.
he's come up with a little bit of a belt system in his room. And I thought it's funny that you said that, but it's very interesting because we see nothing sucks more than you sign up for a tournament and they ask you to put your kid's level. Is he beginner? Blah, 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 blah. But why are you going to ask that if it doesn't matter? So if I put my kid's a beginner and then I don't know, I think I did that with Daniel once early on. I put him as a beginner and we went to a tournament, and the first match out there they had him with a kid from I think it was Riverview that was just a state runner up or something, right? And I was like, and he got killed. But so if we're going to ask what level they are, then let's create
Yeah.
places where they can wrestle other levels. But you see parents or coaches still putting kids in tournaments, whether they're beginners or advanced tournaments, just for mad time. But what's mad time good if they're just going
Yeah.
out there and winning in a minute?
Yeah. No, I the second part, right, where coaches or parents are still putting them in particular places, there's not a whole lot we can do to fight against that because we just don't know all the kids.
Right.
But if everybody has the mindset that we're trying to grow the white belts to be green belts, or we're trying to grow this group to be this group, and get every single kid, the rising tide raises all boats, right? I
Right,
mean,
right,
if we can get that mindset and we can just put a system in place, and let's say you have an individual tournament and you have 10 kids in the thing. Well, split them 5 and 5 and let them wrestle every single person, as opposed to having a 10-person bracket and going 0-2 against 2 kids who are returning state placers. That doesn't do anyone any good, and it actually only hurts our sport.
Yeah, because the whole thing about what you hear everybody say about this sport is off season builds champions. Work in the off season, get time in the off season. Like, I understand during the season it's a high school tournament. You can't avoid
Right.
that. You're
No,
going to have
yeah.
beginners.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's going to happen. But during the off season, when we're doing tournaments for mat time, we're doing tournaments to get kids better, and we're doing things like that, then yeah, I agree with you. And
Yeah.
the belts, I mean, you'll see like in the jujitsu world now, you're starting to see, because when I talk to them, you're starting to see them start wrestlers off at not white belts. I think it's blue or purple. I don't know their belt system, but I think it's blue or something that they start them off at now, because you
Simply
have like,
because they have grappling background.
well, yeah, I mean, Coach Mike Bush, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen him? He looks like he's an animal. He's huge. He looks like it. Well, he comes into jujitsu, and they said he showed up at a white belt tournament and he was killing people because he's destroying people. So, or you see like,
Right.
imagine Kyle walking in or to a white
Yeah,
belt.
no, I know.
Like, this is different. So yeah, I don't think they're saying. I don't think.
By the way, Coach Bush was equating you to Kyle Dake. I mean, I'm just saying that was the equation that he just made that thing.
I'd like to see them both wrestle jujitsu against each other. But I got to imagine if if somebody walks into a jujitsu dojo or whatever they call them and wants to learn jujitsu, and they're like, oh yeah, I wrestled a little bit in high school. Well, yeah, that's not a blue belt, right? I mean, that's a white belt you're going to learn. But you have like a 2-time state champ walk in, a NCAA blood round kid, an All-American, an NAIA college wrestler. I mean, these guys are high-level grapplers, right?
Yes.
And they're walking into white belts, and they're hitting singles and doubles and turning backs in. I don't know. Did they just show a video where Knopf went to some grappling competition yesterday, and he choked the guy? It was like a minute. It was over. I watched Destin McCauley. He was last year. He was working out at a local gym, and there was a grappling tournament. A jujitsu grappling match that was happening in a cage somewhere, and they lost one of the opponents. They're like, "Hey, you want to try it?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So he's going in, and here's this high-level jujitsu guy, and he walks in. He takes the guy down and chokes him out in a minute and a half, and he's never been in a competition like that before. But
yeah,
but he was a 5-time Minnesota State champ. He was a Nebraska Kearney NCAA Division II. I mean, obviously levels to this game, right?
And so I think that jujitsu, the organization or the sport as a whole, probably recognizes it and says, we're actually hurting our new white belts by having these high-level grapplers come in at this level. We need to kind of assess them and then put them in the right spot so that we're not getting somebody hurt, or we're not pushing people away. And that's what we need to do in wrestling. We need to assess it and say, this kid is brand new. This kid doesn't know what a takedown is, right? I'm not going to put him out there against Michael Mako. Like, that's just not fair.
And yeah, Michael Mako is going to throw him to the next mat.
Right. And you know what? And there's nothing wrong with Michael doing that, because that's what Michael's trained to do. But why are we putting them in those situations?
No, I understand. And you never know. I mean, kids just, yes, it kind of sucks. You're a new wrestler, and first match out, you've got one of the Solis brothers, and you're like, oh, that's not going to be really good for me. And, you know, but yeah,
All
a
right.
belt system would be awesome. But
What do you got going on this coming week? Anything?
I don't really have much. I'm going to my family was invited to
Sorry.
a party Friday. They call it a quinceañera, so sweet 15 for those of you who don't know it. When the girl turns 15 in the Latin community, they call it a quinceañera. And I did photos for the young lady last week with, kind of free photos. And then I'm doing the photography for the event Saturday
Okay.
night. So I'll be there doing that. So I did get invited to places, but everybody, yeah, I mean, I was going to go to the duels with JT. I was interested in that, but I would have had to come back early for this Saturday, and it didn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, for everybody's interested, I am not in Pennsylvania or Utah, but I will be following along, trying to post a bunch of stuff. You and I will talk about it next week, and we'll talk about junior duels and the girls as well. Does that work?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited, and I, obviously a good following for SC Wrestle. I ran into the Camden boys this weekend, and
Yeah.
obviously Wilder and Pedersen and the two brothers, Tank and
Brock.
Weaver,
Yeah.
studs, and really, really, really nice kids. And I got to talk to the dad just for 8 seconds, just to say, "Wow, you raised some good boys there." And he said, "Thank you." But they watch. I told them about the Dirty South show, and they said, "There's no SC Wrestle show anymore." I said, "No, it's still going on." Okay, so we're just doing a different thing on Tuesday. So tune in.
That's
So
right.
uh, they're obviously tuning into you and checking you out. And those three kids are pretty good. Four kids are pretty good.
Camden as a whole is really good. Camden
Yeah, I
as
would
a
love
whole.
to. I know they're having a camp this week, and I see a lot of our Florida kids up at their camp. But man, if I could figure out a way to maybe take a drive with Zachary up there and be like, "Hey, can you teach him that series?" Because man, wow, and when they get on top of you, it's nighty
No,
night.
they're tough. They are tough. They remind me of Pennsylvania kids on top. They're that tough.
Yeah, that rip your arm out series.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty badass. All right, man. Well, this was fun. I appreciate you jumping on with me.
Yeah.
Always love it. And I'll get back to editing photos.
All right. And everybody make sure you tune in to the duels, man. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'll have them on.
See ya.
See you.